Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Canine Connection podcast. Today, we are welcoming guest Laura Holder on to talk to us about her involvement with her dogs in conservation efforts. In particular, I know one of the species she does these efforts with is bumblebees, but I'm pretty sure there's other ones she's going to be talking to us about, which is super unique. Aside from, I believe she does some dog sports on the side, like the rest of us, we thought it would be pretty unique to have somebody on to talk to us about something more specialized, such as some conservation efforts with her dogs. I know Laura, just a quick brief, like how we stumbled upon Laura. I know her because I started my business recently and I needed somebody to design a website because I'm definitely not creative enough or tech savvy enough to do that. I reached out to my breeder, Kate Graham of Catalyst Kennels, who I asked her who does her website, and she went ahead and gave me Laura's contact. And it was pretty funny because Laura also has a Catalyst dog. So getting to know Laura and what she does, it was pretty cool to see that she does something really unique, such as the conservation efforts. So we decided it would be kind of cool to have her on and talk to all of us about what she does and her passion for training and how she got started. And we welcome you, Laura. So want to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Laurie and Petra. It's early here, I'm not gonna lie. So there's not enough caffeine in my bloodstream yet, but I kind of want to, I don't know, intro myself. I'm a dog trainer by way of having a very special, challenging dog in my past. But by schooling, I'm actually an industrial designer. So I started, my career in corporate America behind a computer screen, basically, for 15 years. And then, as many of us, listeners, and then you guys as well, probably, a dog came into my life that had some behavioral difficulties, and I got really interested in behavior modification. And part of my behavior modification plan for this particular dog named Oscar was getting involved with canine nose work. And that was a pivot point in my life, both professionally, but also as a guardian to my dogs and the many, many, many teams that I have worked with since then, and have kind of pushed that into a career of teaching other folks to really appreciate their dog's natural gifts and canine nose work, but also then taking my two current dogs out into the field for conservation efforts.
So what led you to the conservation part of it? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So, like, how did you even how do we even know what that, how did you even come across that? Like, I don't even know it was a thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
bees, dogs, what? Yeah.
So in 2016, by that point, I had been teaching canine nose work for about 5 years. And for those that don't know what canine nose work is, it's teaching your dog to locate essential oils. And if you want to go on to competitions, there's plenty of opportunities to do that. But that's not absolutely a requirement for many of the teams that come into canine nose work. So I had been teaching for several years, and a local Milwaukee-based nonprofit named Mequon Nature Preserve, they had gotten my name after they saw a conservation dog demonstration at a national conference. So they saw one of the dogs from Working Dogs for Conservation, who's based out of Montana. And obviously, like, they saw this dog sniffing out, I think it was emerald ash borer or something like that. And they thought it was the coolest thing ever, because it is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And Kristen, who is the executive director at Mequon Nature Preserve, contacted me. I am literally taking a phone call behind my computer at my corporate America job, like, hey, I got your name. We want to have a conservation dog for Mequon Nature Preserve. And we have almost 500 acres of land, and we have multiple projects going on for invasive species, mitigation, but also bringing natives back. And we feel a dog would be a really great complementary method for the property to assist with these programs. So I'm like, just like you guys, I'm like, what the hell is a conservation dog? So I like pull up the Google machine, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
conservation dog, what's this? What's this? And it pulls up Working Dogs for Conservation. And I was like, oh yeah, that, I've never done this before. However, I've got the kind of history of teaching dogs to, alert on novel scents of essential oils. And I would love to partner with you guys on this. So at that point, I didn't have my own working dogs. I helped establish the MEC 1 Nature Preserve working dog handler team. And then from there, I got Ernie the following year, and here we are, like 8 years later. Um,
So what exactly do you guys do? Like, what
yes,
does Ernie do?
Ernie, he has multiple jobs. Right now, he's being my office mates. Both Ernie and Betty are very seasonal based conservation dogs. So we are typically out from May until like late August. We've done different species of turtle detection. So locating live turtles, usually for population monitoring or trying to locate female turtles that are gravid, which is they're pregnant with, the eggs in their bellies. And hopefully then our partners can bring the pregnant females into a facility, incubate the eggs, and then release them into the wild for a better chance of survival. We also do the bumblebee nest work, which is really kind of like our bread and butter. We've just finished our 5th year of bumblebee nest detection. So the dogs are trained to locate the actual colonies where the queen bee is establishing the future progeny of bumblebee survival. So the
Wow.
dogs don't find the actual flying bumblebees, which would
Mhm.
actually be really funny, but it's actually challenging. But they are trying to find the nesting habitats so we can learn how different restoration efforts nearby are helping or hindering their survival of bumblebees, which are a native species in the United States.
How do you teach your dog? You have to obviously teach your dog to look for different scents, right? Because a turtle must smell different than a bumblebee nest. And right? So I feel like in a lot of working tasks, dogs are taught, well, maybe not, maybe more than one thing, but they're taught to find either a human, I find, or a cadaver. But in your case, they're finding more than one thing, not necessarily simultaneously, or maybe they are. I don't know. But I would think that would be a little more complex.
It can be, yeah. And there's in the world of working dogs, there are generalists, which my dogs are because they're trained on multiple different species. And then there are specialists who are dedicated to doing one species for various reasons. Sometimes it's a public safety situation where that dog should really only be finding,
Yeah.
that particular species. The direct example of that is for like bomb detection dogs. They're not
Yeah.
also trained on other types
Mhm.
of targets. So with my dogs and many other conservation dogs who are trained on multiple species, some of it is the seasonality of the work. Um, Other components are like I get a lot of inquiries of like, hey, can your dogs detect this particular species? And sometimes those are just pilot studies. So they're, one season and then it's done, like it's cataloged.
Mhm.
From a learner perspective, my dogs actually love being trained on multiple species because they have additional opportunities for reinforcement in the field. So
Mhm.
when we've been out doing turtle surveys, my dogs, there's habitat overlap a lot of times with bumblebee nest habitat and turtle
Mhm.
habitat. So my dogs will find a turtle and then maybe, half hour later, they're like, hey, I just alerted on this, pile of grass in the ground and now here's the bumblebee nest. They love that. And it actually is really nice for me as a the handler as well. With turtles, you can usually verify pretty quickly, like, oh, there's a turtle because I can see the turtle, sitting on the ground. Bumblebee nests are a little bit more tricky, so a lot of times they're underground or under some vegetation. Um,
Right, right.
but yeah,
So what do you do then? Like try to dig to see if they're in there? Or do you call like a ranger or I don't know what they're called to
A bee
verify that the bee nest is there?
we are almost always out with our project partners.
Okay.
The quest for our bumblebee nest work is usually to find the federally endangered rusty patch. And in that regards, we have to have our partners around because they hold the various permits to actually
Mm,
handle the species if, in fact, the dogs find one of their nests. So I do an initial kind of visual inspection
mhm.
because the dogs can smell the nest. Sometimes you don't see the actual bumblebees entering and exiting in the same time. But
Mhm.
a quick, minute or two of just looking around, like, do I see anything? I feel like a fifth grader sometimes, like, do you see anything? Do you hear anything? Do you smell anything? The dogs are like, yeah, we smell it. So depending on what kind of vegetation the dogs are alerting near, I might do a gentle prodding with a pole or something just to kind
Uh-huh.
of, lift some vegetation off. But otherwise, the client or their field technicians will kind of sit there for about 10 minutes or so and do their more physical manipulation. So we're not ideally digging up the bumblebee nest. We're just trying to verify, like, yes, there's a nest
Uh-huh.
or not. At the end of a bumblebee's life cycle, which is usually like late summer, early fall, the client might then go and dig up the nest to do some more genetic testing or whatever they might want to do.
Research on it.
Research on it. Yeah.
So, do you guys kind of start like 500 acres? That's a lot. Like, Right. do you kind of say, like, does the person you go with say, well, we're going to check out this? Like, how do you work that out? Like envisioning you out, like holding the map, and there's like five scientists following you and your dog. That's what I'm envisioning. And you're like out there in like your ranger gear, mapping it all out.
Yes.
Is that what it looks like?
Yeah. Well, yes, sort of. We usually do a pre-deployment meeting or two where, they can pull up. We have so many nice like map, GIS maps and access to Google Map and all that stuff these days where we'll sit down with a planning session, and the client will usually say like, hey, I'm thinking we will want to survey these areas for whatever, whether it's year over year data or, this is a new parcel of land we just, acquired. And then I will then go over it with the dog detection kind of lens. I'll be like, all right, this is going to be a little bit more tricky to get the dogs into.
Mm,
This habitat here actually might be really valuable for the dogs to survey. So it's actually a lot of collaboration back and forth.
yeah.
And with the bumblebee nest work in particular, having the benefit now of doing it for multiple years, I can actually kind of guide the client a little bit more with like, here's the actual data I have from, 5 years of field work where the dogs are going to be the most efficient, whether it's physically efficient, odor-based efficient with, the habitat and weather conditions and so forth.
Right. And is there one, like when you're out there in the field, is it just one handler team doing this, or are there several going through the property, through the acreage?
Yeah, we are typically out just one human and dog at a time. Uh,
Okay.
Certain deployments I have done 2 teams out at the same time, but we're in different parcels or parts of the parcel. Scent detection, even dogs like Ernie and Betty White, they live together, they cohabitate all the time just comfortably. It can kind of prick up a little bit of competition between the dogs if they can see each other working when it's a scent
Mm,
detection task, because it is a very innate type of
yep.
skill that we're tapping into, right? An
Yeah.
instinctual hunt. So, and I've seen this in my backyard. You guys have probably seen it too. One dog goes to sniff something in the backyard, and then the other
And you
dog's like,
trace
hey,
it
what
the
do you got?
right.
I want to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
sniff
yeah.
that thing. So we can definitely do multiple teams where they can kind of see each other, but they're not in, the same half
Search
acre.
area.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So,
Okay.
I have so many questions. Weather, right? Because you said the primary season's like over the summer. Where do you live? I
I'm
forgot.
in the Midwest, so in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets hot. So do you have to go like super early in the morning, or how does that, or is there water on the property?
Yeah, it's the shitty part of the job. As I will say that and the ticks that you have to pull off your dog when you're done and yourself.
Yeah.
The With the bumblebee nest project in particular, the height and like the maximum growth of the colony is right in the middle of the heat of the summer. So we are, as much as we can, getting the dogs out early enough where the heat is not super bad yet, and the humidity is another
Mhm.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But it also has to be late enough in the morning that the bumblebees are actually active, which will help with, that additional detection
Mm,
task of like, oh, we can verify, that there's a nest. Even though we trust the dog when they alert, it's still nice to be like, oh, I literally have seen bumblebees entering and exiting now.
right.
So I've got cooling gear for the dogs. I've got some sun shield t-shirts. I've got water that I bring. Some of the properties have, waterways or smaller ponds or inland lakes that I can dip the dogs in.
Yeah.
But in general, like we'll start at 8-ish, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we might be done by 11:30. or 12 o'clock. And honestly, the dogs, once it gets over like 78, 80 degrees, especially with humidity in there, like I won't even go out if it's going to be in the 80s before 10 o'clock.
Right.
So, and the
Yeah,
clients are
yeah.
very understanding. It's the direct relation, like, you don't want to be out there, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
The
Yeah, yeah,
dogs,
yeah.
the efficiency with detection when they're trying to pant and stay alive, just
Yeah.
significantly gets compromised when it's warmer.
Yeah. And it's also too for people who aren't really familiar, if you like I know like if I just casually throw bumpers like for them to just hunt them, like the amount of energy they're expending, like, and I know I have to watch that. I watch them hunt, like if it's a warmer day, they get hot so fast from just hunting, you know? Like, I don't think people quite understand. Like, they just kind of feel like think the dogs are plodding along, sniffing along, but it takes a lot of energy for the dogs to be searching and hunting, right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. There's the physical task, but then there's that cognitive task, right? Of like locating,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, locating the odor.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because they can overheat so easily just by searching, for
Hmm.
sure. Definitely. So you also have to teach them to kind of range, right? Like when I used to do field work with my dogs, like I had this one dog that I went and did a, f- a pheasant hunt with. He's just a pickup dog, right? So he's just flushing and picking up. And but naturally ranged within an area. But in my mind, I think partially he just did that because he wasn't bred to flush because he had all this competition training under his belt, right? But like, how do you teach the dogs to range? Because they shouldn't just randomly run wherever because you have a target area. I mean, I'm sure it's big, but
Yeah. So I have a lot of feelings about that question. I definitely know and have seen through my own dogs and other dogs I work with, some of that is absolutely genetics and the beast that you
mhm,
put out in the field. So like Betty White compared to Ernie, totally different Labradors. Betty has a natural field range. She'll go like 80 to 100 yards max, but then she will naturally just kind of cease going farther than that.
mhm,
And that works perfectly fine for the work that we do. Ernie is like half field, half confirmation, and like it's crazy if he goes beyond 50 yards from me. Like I'll be like, "What are you doing? Are you going to eat a big ass pile of poop that's out there or something? Like where are you going?" Um, so part of it with having both of the dogs and their kind of physical preferences and how they want to work, it actually allows me to select which dog I want to work in a particular area
yeah,
without having to do too much training, to be honest.
yeah,
Because I'm not I don't really consider myself a lazy trainer, but I'm also like I only have so much time in the day, and I'm not going to try to make a dog someone who they're not. So I'm not
yeah,
going to try to make Ernie range 100 yards, and I'm also not going to try to teach Betty to really localize like within a 10-foot radius of my body.
right,
Um, and part of that also plays into odor does not behave in boundaries. Just because the
right,
client's like, oh, I want you to stop at this particular transect point. If odor is going to break that transect point, I want my dogs to actually follow odor, not just like
mhm,
play by the rules in a way. So, um, but I mean, that said, I absolutely do training through where I placed my training aids to help the dogs learn. Here's where you should maybe expect, to encounter odor with relation to where I might start your search or where I might re-cue you to continue searching. Or if I cue you, I have certain different cues and body gestures I do if I do want them just like, okay, go forth, go sniff, get out there and do it, versus if I want them to do a little bit more fine tooth investigation of an area. So they have those different skills under there.
So did you just kind of figure that out on your own? Are you so it sounds like you're this whole the conservation aspect, you kind of just self-taught.
A lot of it has been self-taught, but I have had some mentorship, via phone calls or emails with other colleagues in the field. But a lot of it is honestly like self-taught through the target that you're training the dogs to find. There's a lot of I don't like to call them mistakes. They're like learning opportunities where you're like, oh I forgot to teach my dog that particular skill or presentation of target odor might be presented, like, oh, I guess next year we're going to be, burying the bumblebee nest deeper underneath, 14 piles of hay or whatever. So I mean, the dogs are the greatest teacher in combination of how the target species, presents itself in the habitat. Like turtles move,
Well,
turtles move,
yeah,
bumblebee nests
turtles.
do not. So teaching the dogs to like work through the trace odor of a turtle that's moving all the way to source versus like, bumblebee nest source materials just kind of sitting there making a lot of odor in the same spot over the course of
Right.
Mhm.
several months.
So you must, and I remember this from my teeny, like microscopic dip into nose work. But it was like about reading the dog, right? Like I remember it was like one of my very early trials and they were giving feedback and they're like, you weren't read I don't know, it was me or my friend. I know, it was something about not reading the dog correctly. So then I started to like, and I still do this subconsciously today, like to this day, right? Like today I was hiking and I like really watch how they react when they smell something and whatever. So a lot of that has to really do with reading your dog and reacting to that and being open-minded and interpreting what's happening, which I think is a skill that like, that's hard for a lot of dog trainers.
Yeah, that's a great point. It has been the hardest thing in my own personal development and also the teams that I work with in canine nose work. Like, it is the hardest thing to communicate. Like, this is like literally your dog's an expert at this. Like, your job is to
Read it.
obviously keep them safe, right? Keep them safe,
Mhm.
but you need to like sit back, check your ego a little bit, and really watch and study how they interpret the world
Yeah,
through their
yeah.
nose, right? Because it's going to do crazy things that you're never going to, in a million years, imagine are possible?
Right. Well, that was fascinating to me too about nose work, and again, like, I'm, like, not even pretending to remotely know much of anything, but just and I know just enough to be dangerous, right? Like that the odor, it moves and it does different things depending on the weather. And it just does all kinds of things that, like, I think humans, again, like, I think one of the biggest problems or challenges with dog training is humans look at things through a human lens and dogs are not human. So they're looking at things differently. So I think a human tends to go, well, dummy, the tin is right there. What are you doing? Right? Well, why are you all the way over there? Well, because the odor moved for whatever reason. And therefore, your dog caught the odor there and it just hasn't made its way back or whatever the case may be. Like, again, it's like learning to think or to interpret it from the dog's perspective versus our perspective. Mhm.
Yeah, 100%, right? And like, I have set many a hides in my many years of doing nose work where I'm like, well, that didn't do what I thought it would, right?
Mm,
And,
right.
like, I've had dogs go right over a hide placement, and then later, we peel back a whatever piece of furniture, and there's, like, an air return right underneath, like, where the hide was, and the
Mm,
odor was just escaping into no man's land, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I think nose work is, like, one of the most humbling things you can do with your dog, and whether that's, like, in competition, in field work, or, for recreational fun, because it is truly I don't know, I think it's a gift for the dogs to actually let us see the world that way.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, the first thing I'm going to do when I have more time, which is hilarious, but someday I will. Like it no, because I found it so completely and utterly fascinating, right? Because I just love dog behavior and I love when I don't know. And well, first of all, the dogs love it because it's inherently self-reinforcing, right? But just to watch, yeah, it's just completely fascinating to me, like completely fascinating. And I think it is a great thing. Even way back in the day, I don't long time ago, I did this thing. I don't even know what made me do it. So I just took like an empty shampoo bottle, poked some holes in it, stuffed some hot dogs in it, put it in the garage, do my dog in there. My dog, of course, ran to it, touched it. Yes, gave him cookies, whatever. So it turned into this thing. So I would put this bottle in my yard, like random places in the yard. And then I would just watch my dog like work the wind. Like that's fascinating, right? It's running away from the object to get into the wind to get to the object. Then I like put it in a tree, like did all this crazy stuff. And it was just absolutely fascinating. I think that would be just like a really good exercise for people, even if they don't do like detection sports, as an exercise to learn to just observe.
Yep. 100%
Huh.
agree. Let's
I
do it.
might
Let's
make my
start a
students
course.
do that.
Yes.
Yes, because what a
Well,
great way, because you're not gonna mess the dog up, because this dog he would spend an inordinate amount of time, because I'm sure I did a terrible job of like, I probably made it way too hard or whatever, but he didn't care. He just hunted and hunted and hunted and hunted. It didn't mess up my regular training, right? Because it was like whatever. But it was just a really nice opportunity to just sit there and watch the dog. Huh. All right. My students are going to get a little
well,
different piece of homework.
yeah.
A different piece of
It's
homework.
so accessible too. It's like you don't have to have, a
Fancy equipment or
fancy
anything.
equipment or training facility.
You don't. You don't.
You can do it
Yeah, you could
inside if
do
it's
it
crappy.
anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
with
think it's so fun. And it's a great way to burn out. This is why I did it at the time, right? Big surprise, high drive field lab. And I would come home from work and train, and then he was like, "More," and I was exhausted. And I was like, "Oh my god, like, what am I gonna do with this animal?"
go find your hot dog
So
bottle.
that was my idea, and it worked because he would just run and run and run and hunt and hunt and hunt until he found it, happy as a clam, get a few hot dogs, I'd hide it again. So it was also just that's what I used it for, like, to burn off extra energy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Love it.
I'm
It's also
excited.
like allowing the dog to be a dog, right? Which is like
Yes.
my
Definitely.
biggest lesson when I had Oscar. Like I was like behavior modification, like, oh my God, he's barking at everybody and other dogs. And like
Yeah.
when I got into regular nose work class, I'm like, oh my God, who knew that just letting him sniff shit out
Right.
was gonna be the ticket to strengthening our relationship, giving him a much needed, outlet for his energy and intelligence. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
never have I looked back. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, and it teaches them, now that you're saying that, right? It teaches them to persevere. It teaches them to problem solve. Oh, this is also a good task, Lori, for confidence and pushing
Yes.
through.
Yes.
So what happens if I'm going down a rabbit hole, or you have a student, right? And just nose work, let's say, and the hide's really hard. What happens if the dog starts to bail? What would you do?
What's the answer? It depends, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
how is the dog trying to bail? Like, what are we seeing from the dog? Like we might see clusters of like yawning and shaking off, and or we might see the dog start to just check in with the human, which happens a lot actually
Mhm.
because they're reliant in other areas of their life of like,
Yeah, give
retrieve
me
the
the
cookie
answer.
when it's under the
Mhm.
couch, right?
Mhm.
So it will depend, but in general, like I am willing as their coach to really push the human to like, let's let the dog have a little bit of stress. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm not talking like the dog's ready to have like blowout diarrhea, but
No, I
I'm
get,
like,
yeah.
let's work through this together. Ideally, I'm trying to coach the person through, I don't want you to try and, I'm using air quotes, help the dog right now.
Mhm.
Meaning, I don't want you stepping towards where the hide location
Mhm.
is, trying to like signal with your body language that you might
Mhm.
know where things are. What I usually will coach them through is like, I want you to stay connected with your dog. So maintain eye contact, like a soft smile. If you need to talk to him a little bit, that's okay. Just be like, you're doing a great job, buddy. Like
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
going to get it together. And then my job, in the background, I might just kind of walk myself through the environment to help kick up the odor a little bit more for the dog.
Mhm.
I might move an object somewhere nearby to help entice the dog to investigate the object, which then leads them to where the hide is located. But then there's also the option where sometimes I'm like, you know what? Let's just put the dog up. There's no harm. We didn't leave a bomb behind, right? We left a
Mhm.
piece of hot dog or a Q-tip with birch odor. And then we
Mhm.
talk about like, why do we think this might have happened, right? Like, you just picked up your dog from a 10-day boarding thing last night. Like, maybe they're a little mentally exhausted,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's a really nice opportunity to have that discussion. And I will say, like, every single dog, regardless if they're purpose bred for field work or, a blind 3-legged chihuahua, have moments during its search task where they're like, this is too much. Like, I don't
Mhm.
understand what's going on here. Is also just a really nice equalizer of like, the dog is always right in nose work, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I brought that up is because, a lot of sport. So once you start competing, like with anything, right? Like, and even like field work, right? Once you start competing, it becomes artificial, right? There's nothing in field trials that looks like real hunting at all. Like every hunter will tell you, like apples and oranges, like completely unrelated, right? No rules. Like if you're hunting ducks, they don't have to run straight. They can do all these things that they're
Yeah.
not allowed to do in a trial, right? Therefore, in any sport, they're making it hard for a reason. It's a competition, right? So when they're making it hard, the dogs at some point are going to struggle. That's inevitable, right? And I think that there's a real challenge as trainers. How do we teach our dogs to be resilient, to push through, to not bail, to not give up, or not look at like, help me, bail me out, whatever the case, right? And then sometimes in certain, like if you take competition obedience, it's super hard because it's not inherently self reinforcing at all, right? So sometimes trying to push a dog in that case, for some dogs that can be hard. I think if there's another way or another area where we can teach the dog how to push through, I'm wondering if that might not then like start to spill over into their other work. And right? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's where my brain is running. So I'm like, because nose work is inherently self-reinforcing, and I think maybe dogs will have more of a tendency to want to innately want to or be willing to push
Push.
through,
Yeah.
that maybe if someone in another sport wanted to teach their dog some resilience, maybe even if it was just the hot dog in the shampoo bottle game, you know,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there is some research. I don't know like the actual article name and all that stuff, but there's research around, nose work providing positive bias and outcomes in dogs, of all different kind of abilities. So I would absolutely think that this is a fantastic idea. But I've also seen it with my own students that come into nose work class that they don't participate in the world of dog sports at all ever in their life, right? But they have a dog
Mhm.
that's terrified of slick floors, or is a brand new adopted dog that is from a previously horrible situation, and these dogs come into nose work after probably 6 to 8 months or so. You start getting reports or like little text messages from these guardians of, oh my god, my dog just put their feet up on the chair sourcing a
Mhm.
hide. They would have never put their feet up on something before,
Right.
because they were
Right.
terrified if it moved a micro millimeter.
Right.
So I will say, like, I have seen the sport of canine nose work over the past almost 15 years I've been involved turn from, like, not being accessible to everybody just because there's not a lot of instruction in certain areas of the US to, like, now it's a, international sport that is really welcoming to all different dogs, and I wish there were more folks that do other dog sports that come into nose work. I've heard my own students, but other students that get referred to me like, "Oh, I'll do this when my dog's retired from
Yeah.
agility or
Yeah.
Mhm.
hired from doing all these other fun things." Or I'm like, "You can actually do them at the same time."
Right.
You know?
Well, It's a time for me, it's quite simply a time factor, like, I
Absolutely.
would
Yeah.
300% do it. I'd be doing 30 oth like, yeah, that's my problem, but I would 300% do it. It's just a time factor, right? Like, I training multiple dogs at a high level, it just requires a enormous amount of time, and then there's not that much time left, but now that I'm saying all this, I might do the hot dog
Hot
thing.
dog bottle game.
Well,
For
just
sure.
because I also like for an insecure well, I don't really have an insecure dog right now. But I think like if when I had Zeal, he the other thing about so I'm thinking about my dog Zeal, he's retired now. In terms of like he was terrified of, like, everything, right? So, he was very much handler dependent, and he struggled always with the exercises when I left him, right? So, again, my brain goes, "Oh, well, with scent work, they're independent, like, they're doing it away from you," kinda like you said, like, you don't want to help them, if right? You don't wanna influence them. You want them to solve the problem ideally on their own, and they're working away from you. So again, that makes me think, huh, like if I had done that with him, right? Like, would that have increased his confidence just in terms of would it have increased his ability to problem solve on his own without constantly looking to me to rescue him, right?
Right.
Because
Mhm.
that's something I had to work through in my training, but it was hard for him when I worked it through in that scenario. So which makes me wonder if I had worked it out in something else like nose work first, would he not have needed that transition or would it made that me working it out in obedience, would that have been easier for him, right? Who I don't know. It just makes me wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super
Lori, hint,
interesting.
hint,
Yeah. Yeah.
ever,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I
You
think it
know?
definitely because you can it's cool to be able to set it up outside of the context of, like, obedience exercises where because you don't wanna, like, when you're having some difficulties and you don't want you don't want the dogs to be failing all the time in that or poisoning that actual exercise. So to be able to like teach some more resilience when the things get a little tougher, you can use like that's a great idea because you can build different kinds of challenges in that like hunting game,
mhm,
where they learn to push through, to get whatever it is, which is ultimately going to be a reinforcer that they're looking for in this type of thing. And then you hope that it just kind of transfers over to them having those skill sets now. Like when the going gets tough, like you can do it without me giving you the prompts to get you through it,
mhm,
sort
Right.
of thing. Pretty
Yeah.
cool.
You build the
Pretty cool.
mental it's like you build the mental resiliency
Yeah.
muscle, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, my tolerance level is now higher because I've been doing all these
Yeah.
other confidence building exercises." Yeah. And
Right.
self-reinforcement is a big thing with nose work, with canine nose work in particular, which is the NACSW methodology. You start with the dog hunting for food, unless if you truly have a toy reward dog, which you guys probably know, like some of that is fabricated by us. But would your dog really
mhm,
drop their toy if you threw a steak on the ground or not?
mhm,
But that self reinforcement aspect is humongous for building that independence away from the handler, problem solving abilities, right? And there's infinite layers of different types of challenges you can present to the dog. A physical challenge, a barrier challenge, duration of like you're gonna have to clear a lot of blank space, before you hit outer types of
mhm.
challenges and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. That's pretty cool.
Oh my god, like, now my brain's like,
I
"Oh
know.
god, how am I gonna fit this into my schedule
Maybe like
with
one
everything else?" But,
day,
yeah.
1 day a week, you do one hot dog hide, right? Start small.
You know what's kind of fascinating too is, like never mind, I was just gonna go off total rabbit hole that had nothing to do with anything.
Let's do it. Go.
Well, I don't even like, so I have this one dog now, he comes from very, very, very strong detection lines, right? Working lines, like, search and rescue, police, all that stuff. So, anyway, long story short, he does this fascinating thing, like,
So he did it again today. So he likes to carry a bumper when we hike. And when I hike, I mean for real hike. Like, I'm in the woods moving at a brisk pace for like, hour and a half, whatever, off trails, whatever. So anyway, he'll he'll drop the bumper at some point, never on the trail because this dog is not, he's like always like
Yeah.
doing, all over the place. And at some point, I'll like roughly notice he doesn't have the bumper. So I kind of have a rough idea of the general area where we are, right? So like it happened today. He like was without the bumper and I was just like, ugh, I was in the middle of thought processing something and only semi-registered it. So I'm like literally 20 minutes down the trail and we turn around and head back. So I'm like still like like pretty darn far from the toy. And at some point he comes running up to me and he's looking at me and looking at me and looking at me. And I'm like, dude, I don't have your toy. He knows what the word toy means. I go, you lost your toy. I don't have the toy. So he hears toy and all of a sudden he's gone. Gone, like takes off. I see him flying past my other dogs, like full sprint until I can't see him anymore. He's gone, right? So I'm like, whatever. My dogs always range back. He went all the way back to wherever that bumper was, which was far, far away, and came back. But the way he was running, he wasn't scenting. It's like he remembered where it was.
That's Ever does that too.
And that's far away.
Yeah.
In the woods. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, their working memory is insane
Their
sometimes when it
working
comes to
memory
that.
is insane. And it
Never had a dog that had one like this dog though. Like to that distance, like in the woods, like it's not like, I don't know. To me, it doesn't all look the same, obviously, but I don't know. It blows my mind. He's done it before, but I'm just like, every time I'm like, maybe that was just a fluke, but I know at this point it's not, right? Yes. It's mind blowing.
Yeah,
Like to
pretty cool.
me, um, yeah. So that was beyond random. And I guess I'm sure at some point he must have used his nose a little bit, but for sure he had a pretty clear idea of because he took off, so he knew it wasn't close by.
Right. And then you have to ask, like, like he knows the pathway back to it. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
knew exactly that direct path back to that source. It is pretty
So
cool.
when you go and do the conservation, right, you must do areas you've done in the past. Does that have any impact on the dog at all?
Yes, it can, and this is where it's a personality difference between Ernie and Betty White, to be honest. Ernie is much more of an opportunist and will kind of do the, "If I go back to this spot that I was at previously,
There's a good chance.
what
There's
do
a
you
really
think,
good chance.
mama?" Yeah, where Betty's a little bit more true to, like, "I'm just gonna follow my nose," like,
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, for sure, and I think, knowing that about Ernie in particular, like, I've been able to kind of help build a little bit of resiliency, like, we have little conversations, like, literally aloud, I'll be like, "Dude, nice try. No, I need to see you actually scenting a little bit," and then he'd be like, "Okay," and then he'll move on, to actually
So
continuing
again,
his
you're
survey.
reading. So you're reading
Oh,
that he
yeah.
kind of ran to the spot versus he was sniffing and arrived at the spot. That's how you can tell that
He sort of went back to what he
yeah. So
remembered.
it's back to reading the dog, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
environment, some environments we are kind of working in and around different types of physical structures, like whether it's the nature center or like there's like fence posts or some kind of outbuildings. It's really fascinating to watch Ernie and Betty with those two because Ernie's upbringing, he's older. Like I did a lot more canine nose work type of foundations on him with like interior searches, exteriors, a little bit of vehicles and stuff. So he will kind of naturally gravitate towards some of the foundation training sometimes. So if we're like doing a survey, and then we're coming up on a building. He's like, cool, a building. There's probably a bumblebee nest on there, where Betty will just kind of fly by it. So it's been kind of interesting just to see my own development with each of those two dogs, knowing they are completely different animals as well on top of that. But reading the dog and reading like, oh, the tendency for, this dog is going to be this, and then the tendency for this dog is going to be that.
Right. Yeah, that's genetics, right? Genetics is very powerful. But like you said, it doesn't mean that Eddie isn't valuable. It's just different. And it just means that you as a handler have to adapt and adjust rather than expecting him. Because I think that happens with people a lot, right? Especially if it happens in reverse and they have a Betty first and an Eddie second, right? Then it's hard for them to make that adjustment, and they need to just recognize like, no, this is just a different dog, and you have to adapt your training, your ability to read the dog to this dog.
Yeah. And also like your expectations of that dog, you know what I mean? Like I think we're all saying the same thing here, but it's also like I can't make Ernie into Betty no matter what I try, and that's absolutely fine. And I can't make Betty into Ernie. Just like I had Oscar, my German Shepherd, when I had Ernie, the young Labrador, and I'm like, my first nosework dog was a very paced German Shepherd. And then I went to Ernie, and I'm like, oh my God, this dog moves so fast. And then I went from Ernie to Betty. I'm like, oh my God, Betty moves like so fast, right? So having that progression of, I don't know if it just, happened because of karma or something, but the progression I've had with the 3 dogs I've done nosework with in different capacities, has been really good for my own learning, Yeah. But oh my God. Some days I do wish I had my little slower Oscar.
Because it's easier to read.
It can be easier to process, right? Like when you're watching, you're like, oh, that's what's happening, in that speed versus like, Jesus H Christ, what's happening? Like,
yeah. Yeah, and that's hard, right? And that's hard for people too, because the speed and in the moment. That's why I so strongly encourage people just in so I found this fascinating so I did physical rehab on dogs for a long time. So I would say to a client something along the lines of, does your dog always sit like this? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, can you not know? Don't eat. I know if a dog goes and drinks, I know which dog is drinking. Never mind direct observation. I know who's going up the stairs by their gait, but I could close my eyes and visualize exactly how each of my dogs moves when they walk, trot, sit, run, interact with each other, when they're in the woods, sniffing, whatever. All I do is observe them. A friend of mine has a young dog. She brought it over and it was playing with Zesty, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. They're playing, and the whole time she and I are narrating, right? Out loud. And all of a sudden I realized we're doing it. And I'm like, this is hilarious. Because that's what our brains do constantly, reading the dog. And I think that's something that everyone should be doing, is constantly watching your dog in life with because that's the foundation of dog language right there, is what they're doing every day, right? Because of course, how can you read it at hyper speed, right? At Betty speed or at Zesty speed if you can't even read it when they're meandering around your yard?
100%.
Yeah, so more homework for everybody.
More homework.
Watch your dogs incessantly.
Right? And I will say, in nosework classes, those are all exercises that I set up, on varying levels of when the human has been in class. I'll have a sensory deprivation search where I turn all the lights off and we just listen to the sound of the dog moving or their breathing patterns. Right?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Tell us more. What else do you do? What other challenges do you do?
I do searches where people narrate other people's dogs. Okay, is the dog seeking out odor?
That's a good one, Petra.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I love that too.
once you get down the road a little bit into Laura's chaos of nosework classes, I'll actually have teams go in. So, like, if I was running Ernie in a search, Laurie, you would come in with me. I would be running blind. I don't know where the hides are. I might not know how many there are. And Laurie, you're the one that's actually going to call alert for me. I don't even get to call alert for my own dog. So that allows you to watch my dog with a closer lens, but it also allows me just to push back my ego a little bit of when I
Mhm.
think I should be calling alert, when the dog performs their final response.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's all sorts of different games we play. Like, how much do you actually know about the dog breed or breed composition, and how do you think that applies to nose work and like their superpowers and sniffing out source, right? People that have guardian breeds or herding breeds, like how are those dogs going to potentially be more aware of the environment around them compared to a hunting dog that's been bred more for like, I'm just going to go, kind of bull in a china shop style.
Right, right. When I did nose work, I did it so I had a field trial lab that had actually done field work and obedience, but, he was done quite a lot of field work, and my friend that I did it with had a Malinois. So it's super fascinating because, like, his dog, like, naturally would methodically search a room. So he would start on the perimeter and just, like, it was very easy to kind of observe and go, "Okay, he's searched here, here, and here. He hasn't searched here yet." My
Mhm.
dog went in and it was just, like, zigzag, swirly, whirly, all and I was like, "Oh my god, I don't even know where he was," right?
Yeah.
Their style and I was like, "Well, that kinda makes sense," right? Because, like, field trial dogs, like, get into the area of scent, and then they do kind of like a circle, and then the circle gets, if they do it correctly, smaller and smaller as they, like, get to the source, right? I mean, in hindsight, I also think I could have maybe, I don't know, I could be wrong, taught him to search more methodical, but this was just kinda like, we were taught just let him go and let him find it. But just seeing the difference in the 2 breeds was completely fascinating to me. Like, their style was they would end up with the same similar accuracy, similar times actually, but their approach was completely different. Which
I
was
love
super
it.
interesting.
Yeah. Those
Yeah.
I'm labeling now, but the slow dogs, right? Slow is fast. Like it absolutely is. And like Ernie and Betty, same thing. They're still both quick dogs. Ernie will expend a quarter of the energy and calories that Betty does. And they'll have the same like sourcing time from start to finish. So yeah, it's cool. It is
Yeah,
cool.
it's so interesting. I love that you do that with a different Yeah, I think that's why one of the reasons my online students tend to so I don't know if I've talked about this before. If I have, sorry everybody, but like when I first, I taught private lessons in person, right? Then I started doing this online stuff and I'm like, I have no idea how this is even going to work. How are these people even going to learn like online? Like what the heck? But when they're in a class, so there's like 12 students, so they're submitting their own video, but also all 12 people are submitting video. So students will watch the other students' submissions. And I think that's really good because that's kind of that thing you were talking about where they learn to observe other dogs. Now it's not your own dog because we're always so emotionally entangled with our own dog. And like you mentioned, our egos involved. And it's just a lot harder to be objective about your dog. It's a lot easier to be objective about somebody else's dog. So they get to watch the other students' submissions and my feedback on it. And then you're not as emotionally entangled. And I think it's easier to just observe. And I think that gives them really good information as well. And I think that helps improve their observation skills in general. So I think that's really good. So I think that's a good thing too, right? Don't just observe your dog, like observe other dogs and read their language and what they're doing and what they're thinking and what they're saying. Because I think the better you are at observing all dogs, it will help you when you're observing your own dog as well.
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And I know like some people have to train, with privates or online and kind of isolation just due to their situations. But I
Right.
mean, the power in just being a better human to dogs, right, is like get your eyeballs or even your physical body in front of as many dogs as you can,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like when people say to me, like you know, I can process things really quickly in real time at this point, right? Now, some people will be like, which makes me crazy. Oh, you're talented. I am not talented. It's not a talent. It's a skill, right? Like I'm obsessive. So if you're going to call me anything, call me when I'm passionate about something. Yes, I'm obsessed and I'm fully immersed. So I'll tell them, I'm like, it's that I've watched so many dogs back in the day. I used to sit there and watch YouTube videos, right? Like if I'm training with other people, I'm like, and it's not my turn, I'm intently watching their dogs. Like I'm not on Facebook, I'm not daydreaming, I'm not thinking about my dog. Like I'm watching those dogs. Then as an instructor, I'm constantly watching other people's dogs, looking for information there. But even prior to doing the online teaching, like I just was always observing all dogs as much as I could, any opportunity I had to observe that. And so, yes, now I can observe my dog or someone else's dog and in real time, like process that data like super fast. And therefore, I can respond to it very quickly. But it's a skill, right?
Mhm.
It's just like you said, your first dog was more methodical, then your next dog was a little faster, and your third dog even faster. And then that's what enabled you to develop the skill to read Betty, who's really fast in real time.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think, and it just takes time. I think people have to give themselves a little grace too, that like it takes
Yeah.
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely.
It is. It's a skill. It's a learned skill for sure.
Yeah, to be able to read that in real time.
Yeah.
So I think that, and plus you're doing nose work, so that's good. You're teaching, which is good. I think teaching is, or even being an assistant is good because, like, it gives you more dogs to observe, right? More chances to observe things. Then you're doing the conservation work. So you're kind of seeing them do it like in more of like a natural situation. So you're just getting this constant influx of data and like thousands of opportunities to observe, which then always is just going to feed back into strengthening your ability to work with your own dogs. And who knows, your next dog might be even faster.
Yeah.
Or you might be like,
You're
no,
like,
I want a slower dog.
Nah, we'll see what happens with the next dog.
Yeah, but the
that's
ability
funny.
to read what's happening in real time is super important, right? Because I'm sure you see that. Like people are always late, 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 late.
They're late to, pay their dog, or they're like they don't trust their dog and nose work like, "Oh, I didn't trust that my dog actually found the thing." And I'm like, meanwhile your dog is like,
Screaming, it's
dreaming of
here.
putting a pillow over your face when you're sleeping later. Yeah. People try their best. That's the thing I will say with canine nose work and the wide variety of abilities that I have had to coach for. Like, I've got people who cannot move fast because, they've
Mm,
just got mobility issues or they're just
right.
in their senior years,
Yep.
and sometimes those folks are paired up with very fast dogs and vice versa. You've got, like a younger, more, spunky athletic human that's paired up with a very kind of Oscar speed dog, and like really coaching through those dynamics. And like really, I don't know, I feel like my job really is like, I just want you to understand your dog and appreciate them for who they are at the end of the day,
Mhm.
right? And nose work
Right.
is such a great vehicle to allow that to happen. I don't know. Everybody's always like, "Oh, Laura, you're so great at coaching." And I'm like, "Your dogs are actually the best teachers here, you guys." I'm like, I'm just trying to
Guide.
guide you to seeing like how amazing they are, and like your classmates' dogs, and how like we don't get to spend
Yeah.
enough time with our dogs. So, being able to, I don't know, just read your dog better, right? Understand what they're
Yeah,
saying, even if you
yeah.
don't like what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah, like listen to what they're I know. I say that all the time. Or I'll do this thing. My one student like laughs at me all the time where I'm like, your dog was just saying to you, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Look, it's right over like and I'll like narrate it like a dog. And they'll be like, oh, you're doing that thing again. I'm like, oh, am I? But like I'm like in my mind, it's so clear that this is what's happening. Like this is what the and they're like, huh. I'm like, "You can't see that?" So, yeah, the observation thing is huge, but you're also you do have a unique teaching approach, which is great. That whole, just encouraging them to watch each other's dogs or teaching them about their breeds, like, I don't think everybody does that, and those are
Yeah.
some really, really great ideas and some really great techniques. And I love the turning the lights off thing.
So,
That's really cool. And so yeah, kudos to you though for doing that. But and yeah, you're teaching them to appreciate their dog and read their dog. I think what happens is in a lot of handlers are so task focused, right? Like goal oriented. Like I want my dog to pick up the dumbbell. And so because that's what they're focused on, they miss everything that happens, right? Because they're just focused on the task. And I'm always like, no, 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 no. You should be focused on reading your dog.
mhm.
That's what you should be focused on. The task is secondary. And but that's hard for people, right? Because for whatever reason, they get very fixated.
On getting that goal met before
Yeah.
figuring out how to meet the goal efficiently.
Do you get false alerts on the conservation thing, or is it just you? Is it are they're pretty accurate?
I sure do. And a lot of that will come when there's a reinforcement ratio strain happening in the field. So, like, the dogs have been searching for, for Ernie, it's like 20 minutes, and he's like, I haven't encountered anything. How about this deer carcass? Right? I'm like, wow, that's lovely deer carcass, sir. You know? But they have like actually found some, who knows, maybe there's some odor overlap kind of targets when we were out doing turtle surveys. Like Betty started finding like snake skin sheds, and I'm like, well, does this smell similar enough
Mm, mm.
to something
Yeah. Well,
that
who knows?
I know? And
Yeah.
right, that is the thing. Like, I don't have a
We don't
chemist that I can
know.
be like, can you
Yeah.
please analyze these two odor profiles for me in your
Right.
olfactometer meter thingamajig?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it usually comes down to like, oh, we haven't found anything, and an X amount of time has lapsed. And it might be like more so on like the second day if we're doing 2 consecutive days of field work, right? So
Mhm.
there's a little bit of fatigue involved with that,
Mm,
I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't get mad if they false alert. At the first field season when I was out in conservation deployments, and I was like, I'm nervous like everybody is because you got the client.
mhm.
It's different in canine nose work. You have a judge that's like, yes or no, and you have 2.5 minutes or whatever, and you're done. But in conservation detection and other working deployments, like you have some accountability, right? To
Mhm.
perform a task that you're
Yes.
being hired for.
Yeah.
Oh, that first year when I just had Ernie out that year because this was before Betty was born, he false alerted on something, and I was like, oh my God, I suck at this. And I was like, oh my God. I sucked it up. This is part of just some of my own mental management training that I have. I was like,
Mhm.
hey, he just alerted on this. I don't know why. I'm like, he's obviously trying to tell me something. I'm like,
Mhm.
we just haven't encountered a turtle yet. I think that's what's happening,
Yeah.
So just being very honest and not trying to like, it's like the stuff my mom would be so proud if she heard me saying, like, don't lie. Don't talk about stuff you don't know. Just be very transparent with stuff, in your life. So it does happen. And I know other conservation handlers have had similar experiences. The difference between, a lot of times we're getting called out for particular targets that are difficult for humans only to find. So the dogs are being asked to do this somewhat difficult task, if you will. And I have to be their advocate as well, being like, you know what? Like, they're not machines.
Mhm.
They're not a messiah that's going to find the needle in the haystack for us. They're here
Right.
to help offer a different methodology.
Right.
with these endangered species or cryptic species. Some of the invasive work can be a little bit more reinforcing for the humans and the dogs, just because usually there's a higher find rate, but at the same time, that's not usually where a lot of conservation deployments are happening either with dogs. So that's a long answer to your question about false alerts.
No, we love long answers. No, it's totally fascinating. Yeah, no.
It's
Well,
fascinating.
first of all, I love the mental management aspect, right? Because like people think a competition is pressure. That, like you mentioned to me, is so much more pressure because like they're standing right there. There are these expectations, you know, this is real life. And now your dog basically made a mistake, right? And you could, but I mean, it's not productive to have a meltdown. It's just like, okay, this happened, whatever, we'll work through it, we'll figure it out, whatever the case, right? And like you said, just be honest about it and deal with it and realize that, like, yeah, stuff happens because in sport, people talk about having meltdowns. Never mind just at trials, but in training, right? But that's all just part of it. Like we make mistakes too, like we make mistakes and it's like, oh shoot, I messed up. All right, whatever. Our dog makes a mistake and like the world comes crashing down, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Perspective, people, perspective.
Yeah.
Totally. Did you have to work on your mental management or is that just something that you just did it?
Feel like I as a kid had a little bit more like capacity and resiliency than maybe my parents wanted. And like I don't want to.
Boy.
Yeah. I like have now that I am of a certain age, it is like appropriate that I have looked back and reflected. Like I was a goalkeeper on the soccer team. Like I was always the captain, coached soccer for many, many years. And part of this, like more, I put myself in these roles or was selected maybe back in the day for these roles because of some personality traits and my ability to just be like, you know what, I'll put myself out there kind of
Mhm.
comfort that I have. Didn't necessarily translate into when I started my own business necessarily. So I did start working with a coach, a mental management coach, right around, when the pandemic began, when we had a lot of time on our hands and a lot of office time. So that has really assisted me in the fieldwork, the conservation fieldwork deployment part of my life, but also just like managing those more difficult situations that might come up, whether it's with a client, a colleague, or even just personal relationships, in my life.
Mhm.
And that has been absolutely worth its weight in, however much money that has cost me over the past several years. But I can tell a difference in just the way I like start a day, like the rituals with which I start a day, the rituals that I have with my dogs and my family and so forth directly translates into my ability to be a better working partner for my dogs and also a coach for my canine nose work teams.
So you're doing the conservation, you're teaching nose work, you have a family, you build websites. Are you
Is there anything
like,
I don't do?
no, I do think it's kind of interesting. Like there has been a theme now that we've been like had different people on the podcast, right? Like there are certain people that if they're really kind of, I don't know, doing well in one area that they're doing a whole bunch of different things. So I don't know. Like there must be some sort of correlation there. But yeah, how do you juggle all that? Is that easy for you? Is that challenging?
I am much better about balancing out my work personal life in the past 4 or 5 years than I have been before that.
Because
Because
it's hard.
it is hard. And the more challenging part of that kind of transition when I was working 50 hours a week in corporate America and then also, working 2 nights of the week doing dog training classes and then also seeing private clients on the weekends. Thank God I was young back then, because like I would not be able to do that now without,
Mhm.
losing my shit. So yeah, I have a very healthy relationship with my husband, and like he will tell me like, dude, you're getting a little out of control. Not those words, but I'll be like, okay, I guess I'll see you next month. You okay with that? Shifted the way that I have scheduled my weeks as well. Like you guys know, like nights and weekends are a thing for people that are involved with dog stuff usually, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God, I can't take off, one of the days of a weekend. I'm going to lose some of my revenue. And then I think it was last year, maybe around this time, I was like, I'm going to take off Sundays and Mondays. And I'm like, I moved, clients over that I used to have on Mondays to other days of the week. And they were like, whatever, no problem. It's like when my hairdresser's like, guess what? I'm not working on Thursdays anymore. I'm like, okay, I'll just come a different day.
Right,
Like,
right.
I think we put a lot of pressure on
We do,
ourselves,
we do,
right? To
and
be
then
like, I gotta
people
do.
yeah, and people inadvertently end up just adapting to whatever
They
you need
sure
to do
do.
anyway.
They sure do. Right?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah. So yeah, part of it is, I don't like saying no to things and people, but it actually has been part of my development with my coach's help. Absolutely. She's like, you got to learn how to say no to stuff.
Yeah,
And
saying
it's
no is
fine.
so important.
Yeah.
But the problem is that I think the reason people like us tend to do so many things is because we love we love all the things. I mean, I know that's the case with me. Like, I am obsessed with dog training, and like, I could just, I'm like, now I'm going to hang up and be like, oh God, I want to do nose work. I want to do conservation work. And like, I'm obsessed with everything about dog training. I'm obsessed with being outdoors and hiking and exercising and doing yoga. Like everything I do, like I start shooting guns. I'm like, oh my God, like I could do this. Like I want to do this every day. Like I just love things.
Yeah. Me too. I will very openly share, like, I had a panic attack that landed me in the hospital when I was in corporate America, and, like, that was one of the most, like, humbling things. I was like, "I can't do this. This is not sustainable."
Mhm.
Because 'Cause I'm also, like, the addictive personality type where I'm like, "Yes, I'll do all the things, and I love the things,
Mhm.
and right? So, like, that really
Mhm.
did become a big wake-up call in my life, like, this is gonna continue happening if I
Right.
continue allowing my bubbly personality that says yes to everything continue down. So, and again, that's been part of my mental management coaching as well, like just having those very like firm but not like unbreakable boundaries with like
Yeah.
this is when I don't even have my phone in my bedroom at night, like it's in
Right.
my kitchen,
Yeah.
it's out of my arm's reach starting at 8 o'clock every night usually. So like part of that, because I was obsessively like checking email.
Mhm.
Someone text, oh my God, I gotta text them right back, like
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of that too comes from just our own like natural personalities and the passion we have for the work we do, you know? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but those boundaries are important. Like I'm the same. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
have my own like all these things I put into place, right, to help me manage myself so that I don't like go over the cliff. And I also like when there's something else that I'm interested in, like really interested in, before I like dive in, I do like this assessment. I'm like, okay, do you want to do it bad enough to give up something else? Because that's what you're going to have to do because there's only so many hours in the day. Or like, are you going to give yourself rules? Like, I'm only going to do this once a week or whatever, because otherwise I know my personality. I think it's
Mhm.
self-awareness, right? Like I know how I'm wired, and I know that if I don't put these checks and balances in place, then before you know it, I'm going to be not sleeping, exhausted, overwhelmed, like
Yeah. Yeah.
because I just did that to myself again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything that's a blessing is also a curse, right? It's the same with
True.
the dogs. Like, same thing that makes them one way also make the same thing that our strengths in competition are weaknesses in everyday life.
Yeah.
Truth.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This was super, super, super interesting. Thank
Yeah,
you
it was
so,
awesome.
so, so much for doing this. Now I'm like, I already like, I know as soon as we hang up, I'm going to be Googling conservation in my area because I want to go follow somebody around.
Yeah. Where are you located,
I'm
Petra?
in New Jersey, Northwest New Jersey.
Okay. Do you have a catalyst dog as well or not yet?
No, I have a Maranatha a
Yeah.
Maranatha dog.
Mhm. New York, New Jersey Trail Conference is in your backyard somewhere, probably, but they do conservation work, and
Cool,
they
I'm gonna look
have
them up.
Arden is the lead
Oh, yeah, yeah.
handler there. She's got oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the dog's name. Letty. Letty from Catalyst.
Yep. Oh, cool. I'll check that out. Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
that would be super fun. Like, actually, where I live, which, no one envisions New Jersey like this, but I'm in Hunterdon County, so I have tons of like, um, some of it's state, some of it's county, whatever land around. So like I'm
Nice.
always like I have so many different places I can hike within relatively close to my house. And no one's ever, it's New Jersey. People are lazy, so the trails are
Yeah.
always. But that's true. Like it's insane. Like there's so many amazing state parks, and I'll take my dogs there, all three of them, running around like lunatics, off leash. No one's ever.
I
Yeah.
know. And the thing is like, because like, you hear New Jersey, to me, like, people have, like, this image of New Jersey, especially, like, New Jersey women, and then, like, when I went out to see Petra for the first time, I'm like, "Dude, you, like, live in the rural, like, it's rural
Yes,
out here." Like,
Yeah.
there's farmland.
yeah, and she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Yes." Yeah, it was
That's
so
awesome.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hilarious. But no, and like guaranteed, like this morning, it was, barely in my mind. It was snowing. No one's going to be out anywhere.
Yeah,
Rain,
right.
no one's out. If it's the most perfect, beautiful day, all I have to do is go somewhere where there's a big hill. No one
Yeah.
will be there because no one's going uphill. Like they'll be down by the river, meandering along the river, but no one's scrambling up the rocky hill. So I just go there. So like, guaranteed I can find a place. And yeah, Zesty always brings me body parts and things like that. Like he would love
Oh,
to do some sort of search thing. But again, it's like a time issue
Yeah, yeah.
for me. But yeah, I would love to do that. Like just trail somebody doing that with their dog. It would be
yeah.
so interesting for me. So thanks for that. Yeah, I'm gonna go look that up. I mean, I'm sure they're not doing it now. It's winter, but who knows?
They do some winter work. I just
Cool.
don't know
See?
the full
Yeah.
details, but Arden's great. She'd be
Cool. I'll
happy to
look
have
that
you,
up.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people, if they have opportunities to do these things, like they should. I mean, I did like become familiar with a lot of different sports when I was doing rehab on dogs, right? Because how can I get a dog rehabbed and fully back for competition if I don't know what this dog literally is actually doing? If I have this vague idea, right? Like I need
Mhm.
to see a dog in person doing bite sports or see what a herding dog, not that like does 500-yard outruns, like what does that actually look like what are they physically doing? So I think that people should do that as well, just in terms of again observing dogs doing what they're bred to do, but observing dogs' natural instincts, observing their body language. And like, I just think all of that is just really good information to making you a just more well rounded trainer for your own dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Super interesting.
It is.
Super exciting. Thank you so much. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Laura.
it. Really
Of
appreciate it.
course.
Thank you. Thank
My
you.
Yeah, it's
pleasure.
awesome.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in and go and watch your dogs and go watch everybody else's dog. That's your home.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.